I keep the ladies creaming, and all my fans got them screaming. You can defeat me, you're dreaming. I am QB. You're king in your own mind.
He may sell a lot of t-shirts, this kid, but he's tearing this team apart.
No intensity. No victory.
Any given Sunday.
How's it going, everyone? And welcome to another episode of the Underrated series. I'm Steve Cravens, and joining me once again is my co-host, Gallego, aka Galleghost, right down there. And joining us for the third time on the show, Terrence Tatum. Welcome back, buddy.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and weirdly enough, this is you've done the show 3 times. This is your third time. This is also the second Oliver Stone movie we've done, so that's kind of interesting.
That's true.
Yeah,
well, call me in for all Oliver Stone. I'm here.
So we'll have to get you back for some other filmmakers just for the sake of variety here. But that is the film we are talking about today. Is Oliver Stone's 1999 football NFL commentary film, Any Given Sunday. This is a movie that is loaded from top to bottom with incredible actors. It really is incredible how Oliver Stone, when he burst onto the scene in '86 with Salvador and Platoon, ever since then, his movies have just been jam-packed with talent. I mean, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. Mm-hmm. So guys, before we get too deep into the video, there is one thing that I need to do that would be fitting for this video, and I think both of you will appreciate this. About 7 years ago, I made a drunk purchase that I questioned the morning after when I sobered up if it was really necessary to get, because I didn't think many people would understand the reference. However, how's that?
Well,
so you'll forgive me, but in order to do this right, I have to represent my man Steamin' Willie Beeman.
Yes.
Quarterback in Miami Sharks history.
Now you have to vomit.
I was just about to say. Now you're gonna have to get the freaking trash bag.
All right, so now we're good to go.
Awesome.
I didn't want anybody to be confused that this was a Raiders jersey, because that ain't happening.
That's true.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and tell this to you guys right now as well, and you can tell me what you think. And let me start off this video by asking you guys 2 simple questions. And Terrence, since you're our guest, you can go ahead and answer first. The first question being, do you agree that this movie is underrated? And secondly, do you agree that it is a good film, but that it falls short of greatness?
I do think it's underrated. It tends to get a lot of bad marks when Oliver Stone's brain there saying, that Al Pacino's sort of at this point becoming sort of a stereotypical carbon copy of himself, screaming over the top a lot. And there's a lot of things that people point to that's like, that's not as good. I think it is, especially now. When you go back and watch it now compared to then, you would think that the NFL would have grown, and we'll get into all of that later, but would have grown in some ways compared to what it was then. You're like, oh no, this is literally the exact same thing. And they were telegraphing a lot of things that we probably should have started digging into back then, which is very, very important. I do think because of that, it should start going further up Oliver Stone's catalog. Yeah, his filmography, it should be a little bit higher rated, because I think, one, the way this football is shot is probably some of the best frenetic football action sequences that I've ever seen. But I think there's just a lot of crazy, on-point character moments that was ahead of its time for when it actually came out.
For sure. Andres, what about you? Do you agree that it's underrated?
Absolutely, because I was just in a discussion with some of my movie trivia schmodown folks, where we were discussing sports movies, and I brought up Any Given Sunday, and immediately the entire chat just kind of got down on this movie, basically going like, oh my God, 2.5 hours, Oliver Stone, sit the fuck down type of thing. And it was just like, wow, it's kind of despised to a certain extent. And having rewatched it last night, I sincerely don't get the hate for it, because if anything, this, like, as you guys said, this calls out so many things that would come out later on down the line, and we'll get more into that later. But it's one of those movies that some people call it a little cold and a little emotionalist to a certain extent, but I disagree with that. I think there is tons of like really small little character moments here and there, and there's small little bits of humanity that kind of really grounds the film, and it sort of harkens back to some of the best stuff that Oliver Stone's ever done. I mean, like, mostly it kind of harkens back to what he did in JFK and what he did in Natural Born Killers, where you sort of get the more humane moments out of these really kind of terrible and really unethical situations. And I absolutely think this movie's underrated, and it's one of those that, having watched it last night, it has climbed my list in terms of Oliver Stone's catalog for myself.
Oh, that's cool to hear. Terrence, Jerry Jones actually loves this movie. He watches it every year before the NFL season starts. A lot of former head coaches come out when the movie came out in '99, Steve Mariucci being one of them, saying, like, this is the closest he's seen to like how it really is in the NFL. And I think that the fact that, certain players also have come out and said that this is like the truest it really is to their experiences in the league, I think that speaks volumes to the movie's quality and why it's been able to hold up over the last, 22 years since its release. I'll go and say this. I do think it's an underrated film. I will tell you guys this, though, and we've done 17 videos in the underrated series so far up to this point. And this is the first film we're talking about that I don't embrace entirely. I don't think it's a great film. I think it's a good film, bordering on very good. But I think there's some Oliver Stone-isms in it that really prevent it from being what it really could have been. It could have been. There are some things in here that are absolutely brilliant, where he really gets to the heart of the issue and he really just exposes a lot of stuff, and he does it in such a cool, stylish way. But then there's other things where his worst tendencies come forward, and it just takes you out of the movie. We'll talk about those scenes later on, of course, but for now, I just want to make that clear. All the other movies we've covered in this show, I've always, I defend tooth and nail. Like, I love these movies. I want people to reevaluate them. I don't feel that way about this movie, but I still feel strongly enough about it that I want to talk about it with you guys, because I know all three of us love it. We like it, and it does have more good going for it than bad. So let me go ahead and talk a little bit about some making of facts that I don't know if you guys know or don't know, but all the same for our viewers out there who might not know. Do you know who the first actor who was cast in the role of Willie Beeman actually was?
No.
Sean P. Diddy Combs. And they got him in there.
I heard about that. Yeah, I do remember this now.
Oh.
They got him in there, and I guess apparently they were like, kind of working him into like football shape and kind of putting him through quarterback camp. And then they dropped him. And it was, Warner Brothers came out and said, it was due to scheduling conflicts. That's not why they dropped him. Apparently they had quarterback coaches there working with him to try to get him to take the quarterback for him. And his arm just could not, it looked silly when he was trying to throw the football down the field. And they were trying to build him up and trying to like teach him how to read, receivers and how to like get them open and all that stuff. And they just said like his throwing mechanics were terrible. Wow. And they said, this is not good. Like, this can't be the case. So they actually let him go. And Jamie Foxx came on board. And ironically enough, Jamie Foxx played high school in Texas. So he had that experience. Mm-hmm. Cuba Gooding Jr. was also in the running for Willie Beeman, but I guess Oliver Stone decided that after Jerry Maguire that it was too soon to Jerry Maguire and it wouldn't have worked. Yeah. And I thought that was just an incredible piece. I was like, man, think about how different that movie would have been if they had just like said, screw it, we'll just make it work, and it would have been, it would have been an interesting development. But another piece of trivia that I want to tell you guys is that do you guys remember the house that Cap Rooney lived in that they show in the movie, like Dennis Quaid's character, where he's living with his wife?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's actually Dan Marino's house.
Oh, really?
That's Dan Marino's house. So I always thought that's a cool touch.
That's got to be fun for him. Like, yeah, I got the shit slapped out of me in Dan Marino's house.
Yeah. Now, this is the biggest piece of trivia that I'm sure a lot of people that either love the NFL or love movies have kind of wondered. If this movie really is about the NFL, why aren't you guys using NFL names in stadiums? Because the NFL did not allow it. And once they got a hold of the script, they did not allow it.
Yeah, once they saw the script, they're like, nope, this does not put us in a positive light. You need to rip out anything that says Super Bowl or anything football teams or anything. That's why it was the Pantheon Cup. Because I always was like, that just sounds like a collegiate. What is that? I was like, oh, that's your version of the Super Bowl? That is terrible.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Andres.
I mean, that also sort of provided kind of a little bit of a confusion for me when I watched the movie for the first time. I mean, all those years ago, and then even today, or a couple hours ago, where it was kind of like it just felt like the movie ended before it got to the big event. If that makes any sense.
Lost. Yeah, because they lost.
I mean, they lost, but it kind of feels like. I mean, I don't know. Like, it sort of kind of felt like a little off to sort of mention Pantheon Cup, and I was like, I still watch football here and there, but I don't recall any of that whatsoever. If that makes any sense.
Because the movie is framed in a way that the wins or losses don't matter. Like, that's the whole thing that goes out throughout that entire thing. So that's why it ends with they lose off screen, which is. It's an interesting way to sort of play that, but that's just showing you how little that matters. The whole goal was to show was Tony and Beeman sort of having that come together, come to moment, Jesus moment, where they're like, all right, we are on the same page. Now we sort of agree. And then whatever the heck I do in the future, which I love the button. I don't know if that was always there or whatnot, but the button in the credits with Tony saying, hey, I'm leaving and taking this. Yeah. It works. It works.
Yeah. Which, by the way, it's laughable because New Mexico would never have a professional sports team. So actually, the league. So what happened was when Oliver Stone didn't get the permission for the NFL to use certain stadiums, certain logos, even though he did film at the Orange Bowl and Pro Player Stadium, which is where the Dolphins used to play. He had to create the new league, so it was based on the UFL from the 80s and the 70s that kind of tried to challenge the NFL. And of course, the NFL, killed them. And as a matter of fact, do you guys remember in the movie when Cameron Diaz's character is talking with the mayor, they're talking about getting a new stadium for the Sharks, but but most of our revenue comes from the Dolphins. So we're not going to, do that. So they mentioned the Dolphins in there by name. And it kind of, it's interesting because okay, so this is just an alternative league that doesn't make nearly as much money as the NFL, which was cool. Yeah. That was a cool thing to have.
Yeah.
So that was just a couple of tidbits that I want to talk about. So let's talk about some of the characters in the movie, because I think this is one of the great strengths of this movie is the cast and how well they perform as their characters. Andres, for you, who's your favorite character in the movie? Like, who do you gravitate towards the most?
Honestly, the one I gravitate towards most, it's a toss-up between two characters for me. I really connected to Jamie Foxx's character as well, because there's a certain theme that's going throughout the entire film where it is the new batch of people that are coming in that are filling the spots left by the older folks or the veterans. And I actually really also enjoyed Dennis Quaid's character quite a bit. Like, I thought there was so much meat on the bone for that character that while he is a big part of the movie, it sort of only equates to like maybe about 10 or 15 minutes of screen time total for him. And he is kind of sort of like one of the unsung heroes of the piece, I think. And I think they both provide like a great counterbalance to one another. And I just thought that both of their stories were so great in so many respects. And just even the small moments with Quaid and his wife by themselves, it's sort of like, just like, you sort of wonder why some of these players stay in what they're doing with this when all the injuries are popping up. Medicals are telling you, hey, you only got maybe about 1 year left in you, maybe 6 months. And then, it's either your ego or your wife back home that's telling you, no, you got to keep going for another 3 years.
You got to stay relevant. You got to keep making money, all that, the pressures. Yeah.
Yeah. And just even the fact where she's like, no, you're a legend. You can't leave right now. I'm not going to hear this bullshit. It's like, wow. It shows it from so many different angles that I don't recall seeing in a lot of football movies previously, because a lot of football movies get stuck in the grandeur of the whole thing. They get stuck in sort of the fantasy element, whether it be Remember the Titans, whether it be, even the comedic stuff like freaking The Waterboy or any of that stuff like that, or The Replacements, actually. It gets like all these movies get stuck in a place where it's like about the end game, about the win, about the everything went right for everybody in some way, shape, or form. Whereas with this one, it was just a small little win that led to bigger things later on, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. Terrence, what about you?
I also have a couple, but I'll go with, I love Christina, like Cameron Diaz was great because she was like she was two sides of a coin and she was going back and forth all the time. You could tell that she genuinely loved Tony, but she also knew that I have to destroy this and to kind of continue my business, and I will do it. But like, you get these heartfelt moments when she overhears Tony talking to her mom. She's like, "Crap, maybe I'm not the best person. Maybe I am doing this thing wrong." But there are moments when she's talking to my other favorite character, the whole scene with James Woods, Mandrake.
Yeah.
When she is just like putting back out there and he's like, hold on, I am a dirtbag, but what you're saying is nuts.
Yeah.
And she's like, look, if you want your extension, I'm gonna need you to make this happen. And it's just crazy. Two unscrupulous characters who are doing unscrupulous crap to each other and they're just outdoing each other. But I love that on the other side of that, Mandrake also sort of has it like, this doesn't feel right. But then his whole, he is my second favorite character. His whole speech when he's being let go was like, you guys all know what I was doing. Like, you all are aware of this. Nobody, you're now using me as a scapegoat, but you were 100% complicit in everything that I did. And it's just fascinating that he's saying that. And then when we see the shot at the end when the internist basically does the exact same thing to keep Shark on the field, I was like, oh, see, this is a cycle. Like, this is where this gets dicey.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and honestly, so both of you guys just made, I mean, what you guys just mentioned about the characters you're talking about, that feeds into why the better aspects of the movie, because there is truth in what they're saying. So, Andres, for what you're saying with Dennis Quaid's character, with Cap Rooney, of course, veteran quarterbacks, I have no doubt in my mind, the pressure that they feel to stay healthy, to provide, to stay relevant, the damage to their ego, the shit they're probably getting at home, from the media, everything like that. Even the story of Willie Beeman. I mean, I'm going to bring it up later, but it's funny how this movie came out in 1999, and that whole situation with Cap Rooney and Willie Beeman, all of a sudden, Alex Smith in the 21st century had to deal with that twice. So we'll talk about that a little later, once with Colin Kaepernick and the other time with Patrick Mahomes. Before that, I'd never really noticed that really happening in the NFL. I guess the closest to that would be Joe Montana and Steve Young in the 80s, but it's not quite the same. And Terrence, with you, with Christina's character, it's given us a more layers as well. We're seeing things from the perspective of the owner of the team, what they need to get done, the cutthroat aspect of the business of football in order to generate revenue, get asses in the seats, you know, the blackmail that goes on with providing extensions, et cetera, and so forth. It's such a fascinating aspect to this movie that you do not get in most other professional football and professional sports movies in general, for that fact.
Yeah, everybody in this film operates on a shade of gray. Like, even with the James Woods character, like, I mean, in the beginning, I sort of had like a predisposition towards him where I was like, he's kind of being a piece of crap. Like, he's letting all these players just play with all these injuries and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden at the very end, he's like, no, these players, they made their choice a long time ago. And who am I to tell them that they have to give up on their dream? You want to tell them that? Like,
What's really fascinating about that scene is that he goes back and forth from being a quasi decent human being to an a-hole in that exact same sequence, because he's going there, like, he says that whole speech, and then as he's leaving, when his girl doesn't leave, I'm just like, well, then stay around and F all these Neanderthals. I'm like, hold on. You just called, oh boy, you are not a good person.
And you know, just for me personally, I mean, I love Tony's character. I mean, there's so many coaches that come to mind when I see Al Pacino's performance. And by the way, just another fun fact, you know who the first choice originally was for Tony was actually Clint Eastwood. Oh wow! But Warner Brothers would not. He wanted to direct it as well, and they wouldn't let him direct it because the movies he was directing recently were not being very successful. So unfortunately, they turned him down because honestly, I love what Oliver Stone was able to do with the material, the way he filmed it. But I still think Clint Eastwood as Tony, that would have been. And again, I love Al Pacino; he's my favorite actor. But I think seeing Clint Eastwood in that role would have been more of like a Tom Coughlin kind of coach, you know, kind of like a Don Shula, like the older.
He feels older because Clint always felt older, but it just felt like that would have been a more grizzly approach.
The good, the bad, the ugly. He's like 35 years old and he still feels like he's like 60. Yeah. But I love Tony's character. But to be honest with you, the one character that I always like, I just gravitate towards is Jim Brown's character, because at the end of the day, he's just all about football. And, you know, he is there to be there for Tony, He's his right-hand man.
Right, yeah.
But like he doesn't get involved in the politics or like the business aspect of it. He just is there and he holds the players accountable. And to have that authenticity that Jim Brown brings to that role, like you know what I mean. I just love seeing him.
He's also good because he's there as Tony's right hand. Like when Tony's getting completely trashed at the bar, he's like, "I'm just checking in." And good. Wait, you gonna leave Elizabeth Berkley? You're not gonna get that because you might go get that.
No, what he says is, I know you ain't about to pass that. He's great. Every time I watch it, and I love it when they show the practice going on. He's like, "That's what I'm talking about. You die hard. You die." It's like, man, Jim Brown is in your face barking at you. You better listen to him right now. And also the offensive coordinator role by Aaron Eckhart. I love that. Like, when he's talking, he's like, did we, like, what play did we run right there? He's like, I didn't call that play.
I didn't call that.
Right there. Like, I didn't call that. So that was great. And again, we could talk about the LL Cool J character. We could talk about God knows how many characters are in this movie that are the mayor, again, with the political side of everything.
There's so many small moments in this. Just like it doesn't even mean that much into the entire the script, but Bill Bellamy's wide receiver just saying, "I'm a great receiver," just repeating that off to himself. It's like, that players are going through that. And I think it's like, I'm not going to drop a ball. My hands are made of like I'm the greatest receiver of all time. Like they're trying to psych their brain up before they go out here and play in this gladiator match that they're going to win.
Yeah. And one quick mention, and then we'll move on to some of our favorite scenes, because I want to talk about the movie aspects first, like all the positives. I want to talk about that, and then we can kind of segue into stuff where I have a little bit of beef with the movie, and you guys can tell me what you think. But John C. McGinley's character,
I love John C.
Because he is typical ESPN.
He is 100% Skip Bayless.
Just like a blind bag, and he reminds me of Jim Rome, actually, like that very like kind of, you know what I mean?
It's very much Rome is Burning is what that show is. If people don't remember Rome is Burning, it's not on anymore. But yeah, that's very much what that was. John C. he's having a damn blast with this. But what's great about that is that he is a dick. He's doing this for work, but it makes that scene at the end when he's at the press conference like, "Oh, I'm going to miss this dude. This dude's great." He knows that whoever they replace him with is not going to be nearly as much fun for me to report on as this guy was.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I, again, so many great characters, so many great performances. But actually, before we get into some of our favorite scenes, let's talk about the filming style that Oliver Stone employed. Because Andres, you mentioned that, we talked about, for those of you who are watching this, by the way, who want to catch our Natural Born Killers episode, it's, obviously in the playlist as well. And, it kind of applies to this because even though Oliver Stone didn't necessarily use the color saturations and the animation and the different film stocks, it's still very chaotic. The editing is very rapid fire. The sound effects are exaggerated. Like it sounds like
intercuts images into that's very much a thing in this.
It worked for Natural Born Killers, and I'm going to go ahead and say this. I think it works for Any Given Sunday. I think it worked perfectly for the atmosphere and the chaos that he was trying to create. Andres, do you agree with that? Like, what do you think about his filming technique compared to, say, Remember the Titans, which is a much more restrained effort in terms of how I would even say Friday Night Lights to an extent. What would you say on that?
No, absolutely. I think it's far more restrained than it was in Natural Born Killers, for sure. But this story also called for it to be a little more restrained, except for the moments in the game or the more emotional beats in between the characters themselves. This movie, it felt sort of more like classic Oliver Stone than it did Natural Born Killers Oliver Stone, if that makes any sense.
There's less drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. And less drugs.
That's a fact. He admitted it. He is on less drugs than when he made Natural Born Killers. It's a fact.
You can tell.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not trying to slander the man. I'm speaking facts.
But he was definitely more restrained in this, and I thought it worked well for the movie to the point where I kind of went, it feels like a different case of Oliver Stone, but it's still Oliver Stone in its purest form. So, but also just all the choices he did in the editing, the visceralness of those football scenes. Just some of the sound effects that he puts in, like when Jamie Foxx does the freaking backflip onto the touchdown. Like that thing, you just sort of look at it and you're like, crap, did he just break a bone or is he okay, type of thing. Like there's so many great moments, even the Dennis Quaid moment as well, or even the moment when Shark gets the headbutt, you're just like, oh my God, like you feel that visceralness. And then when the camera pans in and all the cuts are happening, and then you see, Shark on the ground at first, he kind of looks a little normal. And then in the next cut, all of a sudden you just see like this whole stream of blood just coming down. You're like, man, I mean, Stone just really delivered the visceralness of the game in so many ways, and so many small little subtle tidbits here and there that I just thought it was so effective. And it's for me, it's a wonder why this movie doesn't get talked about enough in the football circles, I would say.
It's a weird thing though, because I think at times he loses the subtlety. He goes a little too far, and I'm sure we'll just, but like there's the whole sequence with the player losing an eye. I was like, why is this here?
Oh, yeah.
It's ridiculous. I was going to talk about that later, but I'm glad you brought that up, because
this movie is violent enough. Football is violent enough in itself that we don't need to have you over exaggerate. Like this is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. But but Terrence, I mean, do you agree that this is probably the best, most visceral, kinetic filming done for a football film?
Yeah, I hearken immediately to the Rain game, the game that's played in it's just nuts. Because like you've at that point I've already sort of gotten set into like all the day games and like the traditional football and the style, and then he's like, cool, you got that, I'm gonna flip it on his head, I'm gonna do an all dark night shot with Rain. And I was like, this is insane, and you feel it. And it's smart to sort of intercut when you get the hits, like I'm gonna throw lightning in here because that's what's happening. I was like, this is all really well done. And it just feels different. It's muddy, it's grimy, it's gritty. I was like, oh, this is what for football fans is a smash mouth football. This is what you do.
Yeah, no, to be honest with you, I read, I can't remember where I read this, but I read that the reason it was a creative choice, obviously, because of the chaos of the game. The team is kind of fracturing, and it's a storm going on, like in that particular point in the movie. However, Oliver Stone is a huge San Francisco 49ers fan, and he also he was apparently talking with Joe Montana about concussions, and Joe Montana suffered a concussion that essentially ended his career. And he asked Joe Montana, what did that feel like? What was the pain like? If you could equate it to one thing that you could kind of verbalize it for me. And he said, to be honest with you, when I got cracked in the side of the head, I obviously this has never happened, but it felt like a lightning bolt went from one side of my temple to the other side of my brain. He's like that, and it literally, my eyes went white from the intense crack in my head. My eyes went white, and it took a while for me to like readjust to see what was going on. I had no recollection of the hit. But Oliver Stone, when he heard that, apparently he was like, you know what, that is actually a great, a filmmaking piece that I can use to show the chaos and the violence of the sport, and, kind of juxtapose that with what's going on in the game. Speaking of 49ers, also Terrell Owens makes an appearance in this movie. And the NFL actually, it didn't force anybody, but they told people they would prefer that they didn't appear in this movie. But Terrell Owens, being Terrell Owens, said, fuck you.
I don't care. Right?
Because that's just who Terrell Owens was, T.O. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that, honestly, in terms of the football scenes, that Rain sequence is my favorite, because it is the only one that is different from every other one that's in the movie. I mean, you get the one that's played in the I think it's in the Astrodome in Houston.
Yeah, it's bigger, but it's in line with the other day games that they've had.
But exactly. It's very bright. It's very like primetime TV. This one just there was a lot of symbolism going on and whatnot, so it stood out from the rest of the games in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I thought one of the great artistic touches that Oliver Stone provided in the scene as well, because of the fact that it was taking place in the mud and in the rain, all the players all getting dirty all at once and stuff like that. To me, it kind of seemed like all the players and like, the offense and the defense, they both looked like they were just in the same color. So when you're looking at it from Jamie Foxx's perspective, everybody's the enemy, and I thought that was such a great touch for the scene, and just knowing that the minute he says hike, he's there by himself. He's not going to have any assistance whatsoever. And then you're just looking at it, you're like, oh my God, he is just a fish in a barrel at that point. And like normally with a lot of football scenes, like you just kind of go, okay, well, there's sort of a moment where everyone's going to come together and stuff like that, where where like I was legitimately just feeling nervous because, if you've played football in any way, shape, or form, if you're doing that by yourself,
that could end terribly.
Yeah, it could end very terribly.
It's a lot of things that when people watch NFL, they see their quarterback all of a sudden just getting hit all of a sudden. Like, what did he not do to his offense? What did he do to his offensive line? Like, did he not pay for a dinner? Like, something is wrong. They have stopped blocking for this man.
No, there are games I will watch and an offensive lineman will just flat out just allow a sack to happen. And you do wonder, like, what the hell is going on behind the scenes? Like, and it's like a clear assignment. You can see the blitz is coming and you purposely allow either a safety or a linebacker to come rushing through to get your guy. What's going on? Like, it makes
that's why it was great. Like you get the line on the side with Cap's like they're not listening to him anymore, and Tony's like they got to figure it out. Like this they have to figure it out. Like, he's gonna learn.
Yeah, and I love that at the end of that scene too, where like Al Pacino's just so disgraced. Tony's just like, you know what? Tonight I'm ashamed to be a coach for what you allowed to happen out there. I'm ashamed to be a coach.
Yeah,
and it's true. I mean, like it's kind of sickening when your own teammates, no matter how big of an asshole you are, like your ego's getting big with all this attention. It's disgraceful when your own teammates essentially just kind of leave you out there to dry.
You and just leave you out there.
Yeah. Shitty.
Especially in something that's so viscerally violent, like that you could be, your life could be changed because they're not doing their job. Like that's where it gets like, okay, this is more than just you didn't pay a bill, and it's like you are risking my life.
No, and we'll talk more about that too with the LT character, because that very much plays into what he was going on with. Okay, so we talked about the characters, we talked about some of our favorite moments and whatnot, but let's talk about our favorite scenes in the film, because there are a lot of great scenes in here. In all honesty, I think there's some scenes in this movie that rival some of Oliver Stone's best work, both in terms of the outrageousness of it and in terms of the subtlety and the kind of getting to the heart of the issue in certain scenes. So Terrence, for you, what is when you think about this movie? I know that it's kind of a loaded question, but what is the first scene you think of when you think about this movie?
Mine goes back to also tag on to one of my favorite characters in there. It's Christina's walk through the locker room post game when all the guys are ass naked and she doesn't have a care in the world. It seems on the outer level like, oh, this isn't a big deal, but like, oh yeah, cool. She's just walking through the locker room. The subtext of it is, however, how easy it is for owners to separate humanity from property and like she wasn't thinking about those guys being dudes or whatever. She's like, I own these guys. This is my property. This is my people who work for me. I don't give a damn. If they naked, I'll get naked in front of them. I don't care. Yeah. I'm not here for that. This means nothing to me. That's why the quasi hit on that Willie gives to her doesn't. She's like, I'm here for business. What are you talking about? Date players. I don't date players. She's not seeing any of them as any type of human. You are literally just X's and O's that I can move from one. And that just, every time I think of this film, I just go back to like, that speaks volumes to me of what her character is and how this NFL as a whole operates. Yeah.
So Terrence, great scene. Do you have any other scenes that you like to talk about, or is that I know that's the one that stands out for you, but like, do you have any?
That's the one that stands out immediately. The other one, that it's such a simple thing, but it's sort of a two-parter. I love the whole Willie going to Tony's house sequence and having that interview. I love it because it just, from the very start, Tony clearly doesn't know who the hell Willie is. When he gets called up and he's like, he has to just like triple take to him, like, I don't even know what you look like. How are you on my team? I'm not aware of you. And then it's just this disconnect with that he has with him when he's like, imagine you in the hood and you're doing this. Like, why? Just because I'm a black dude, I'm from the hood? And like, Willie at that time, because he's the new guy, doesn't say anything, but it sort of comes back into play in that scene when he's in the house. Like, you just said, I'm the dude from the hood. You just expected me to know. You don't know me from a hole in the wall. And that tit for tat that they have. What's amazing to me, because Al even said it to himself, he was like, I didn't really know who Jamie Foxx was. This kid went toe to toe. Like, it felt like we were equals. And Jamie was like, at the end of it, he gave me my kudos. Like, this was a damn good scene. And I love that scene. And it plays off even more when he calls him to the sideline at the end and he's just like, yo, can you tell me, my jambalaya, how was that? And he said, man, it was terrible. That's why I've been throwing up all this time. I was like, oh, that's a good triple callback from all the way through. And I loved how that all sort of came together.
No, that's good. And I also love, like, in that scene that you're talking about, like when he's like, he's trying to calm him down and settle him down. It's like, so maybe you're back in Texas, maybe, maybe you're in the hood, you're playing with your friends, your mom is down the street,
you're behind the view.
Yeah, turn around. And then there's a moment where like, so you just turn around, that's it. And then like Al Pacino's so good that he has a subtle pause where he realizes that like what he's saying is not coming across. So he just says, okay, what my point is this, just relax. Like all what he just told him is like for nothing. Like he just realized it was just a complete waste of time.
Correct.
Willie, what I'm trying to tell you is this. Okay, just, you know, so yeah, absolutely right. That's a great scene because that, you're absolutely right. Beeman. All right. I just has no idea what he looks like. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Oh my God. But just to quickly piggyback off of that, because that is actually my favorite scene is the first Tony and Willie scene in the house. Like I absolutely love that scene. I mean, just also even in terms of what is being said on screen, but also in terms of the editing that Oliver Stone does during some of the more contentious moments of their conversation, like cutting in the moments from Ben-Hur, and you're just like, where's Ben-Hur coming from? And then you realize that, oh, it's playing on the TV in the background and it's fitting the scene entirely. Yeah. And it's just one of those things where you're looking at it from the perspective of Willie, and there's all this chaos. He's feeling all this negative stuff, but also at the same time, there's the fucking TV playing in the background that's illustrating the point almost to a T. So,
yeah, he also says it like a point blank right at the beginning of the scene, the gladiators of their time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Which, I mean, again, like, listen, guys, we talked about this in the Natural Born Killers review. Oliver Stone has never been one for subtlety.
No, hit you over the head.
Yeah, like, hey, face meets sledgehammer. Like, I mean, like no subtlety whatsoever. But that is a great scene.
And how many times throughout the film do you see just like Oliver Stone just kind of insert himself here and there? Like when he's inserting himself as one of the announcers, or when Tony is looking up at the wall of portraits over at the bar, and there he is right next to him. It's like, oh, come on, Oliver.
I think it was most of them, right? It's like him, it's Cameron Diaz, Al Pacino, like they're out there in the mock-ups, whatever it was, Miami bar. Obviously, you know, for those of you who don't know, I'm currently in Fort Lauderdale, which is right, you know, up the way from Miami. So that obviously lends itself to me as well. But which there's so many great landmarks that they filmed around that I appreciate too. But you're absolutely right. That scene is great because I have no doubt in my mind that there have, over the course of history in the NFL, there have been Hall of Fame level coaches that have had a new blood quarterback come in, and there has been that disconnect, and they probably invited them over to their house for dinner and tried to reach them and tried to get them to realize that it's not about you. You're part of a team. It's not about you and your fucking music videos and your endorsements and shit. Like, that's nice, but like the team comes first, not your freaking ego. When we call plays in the huddle, when we're calling you plays, you run those plays. You don't improvise.
Yeah, I love how like Willie originally was like, yeah, no, I changed things up. It's like, no, I'm not talking about audibles. You can do that. You're outright changing stuff in the huddle. That's where the problem comes in.
Yeah, that's a huge problem. Right. So again, that's a great piece. That's one of the tributes to, or not just a tribute to like NFL history, but it's also, like you said, it's the dynamic between Al Pacino and Jamie Foxx is so good. And they're so tit for tat, and it is so impressive because Jamie Foxx, prior to this, you know, comedian, a lot of comedic turns, whatnot. This was his first dramatic moment. Yeah, no, actually, I think it was his first dramatic turn, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was before Collateral, and it was before
Ali.
It was before Ray. Was Ray first?
Ray. No. This was 5 years before Ray.
So this is his first. So because at this point he was still doing the Wanda, like the Jamie Foxx show. Like
that's right. Yeah, that's right. So he just an amazing job to, and it's kind of funny because it kind of makes you think. You know what? Every actor tries to imprint a little bit of themselves into the role they're playing. I mean, you hear a lot of actors say that. So maybe that is Jamie Foxx's confidence coming through and Willie Beeman. Like, you know, I don't care if you're Al Pacino. I don't care if I barely do dramatic roles. I'm gonna come at you, man. Let's go.
With
Yeah. And it's great. And it really it fuels that movie, and it's so wonderful to watch, and it's great. But for me personally, I guess I'll cheat. I'll say two scenes because the speech that Al Pacino gives in this movie, I mean, that is up there with Bill Pullman's speech at Independence Day.
I watched it this morning, and I was like, I need to go do some shit because he just got me amped. Like, I need to go do something.
It's great. It is great. Like, Al Pacino cuts away to some of the players where they're just like, they got like blood coming out of their eyes. They're like ready to go to war for this guy. Like, we claw with our fingernails for that. It's like, yeah, like just getting pumped up and jacked up. And it's great because at that point in the movie, we've seen how far, you know, what Tony's been going through with the the estranged son, the estranged wife. He's clearly, an old dog on the way out. His own niece doesn't even want him with the organization anymore.
Yeah.
And when he finds a way to turn football into something that everybody in life can relate to, that it's the struggle that you keep fighting and you keep moving forward and you keep going, and you look at your teammates next to you and you realize when it comes down to it, he's going to fight his ass off for you, just like you're going to fight your ass off for him. And either we heal now as a team or we die as individuals.
Yeah, it's great.
That's football.
I love that there's a moment cut in there when he's still overlaying the speech behind, but they have a moment where Tony sort of points and nods to Willie to be like, this is specifically for you to catch on, and Willie's like, yeah, I got it. I got it.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And also a scene that I want to talk about just briefly before we get into some other aspects here. The sequence between Willie Beeman and LT, so Jamie Foxx and LT, when they're in the sauna.
Oh,
this is what I was talking about when this is like Oliver Stone at its best in terms of a style. Like, I know we're talking about how great the football scenes are filmed, but if you look at how he films it, like with just Willie kind of sitting there in the steam room, and it's very murky and whatnot. LT's just kind of sitting there, kind of eyeballing him and telling him the truth. And I love it because what he says is so true. And I'd never even occurred, like when I saw this movie at 16, it never even occurred to me to hit me like a bolt of lightning. And I'm paraphrasing here because I can't say the exact quote, but he says, for every Barry Sanders, for every Jerry Rice, for every, I think he mentioned a couple other players.
Those are the main two. And then
those are the main two.
And then he named people you would not even know.
Yeah, like the big guys who own the contracts, who are like Hall of Famer guys. For every one of those guys, there's 1,000 guys you've never even heard of, and who would give anything to be in the position that you're in right now. And it kind of made me think about, think about all the players that have come and gone over the years in the NFL, that have played on teams, gone to practice squads, whatever, and then just fizzled out and you never heard from them ever again. And it's kind of true. It's kind of sad how all these dreams are had, and they're lived in for such a brief moment in time.
It's a small window of time that you can be an NFL player. You get some freaks every now and then. Tom Brady's an outlier, but he also plays a position that is a little bit more protected than some of the ground and pound folks. But yeah, you on average 5 years is sort of you're a unicorn at that point. Anything beyond 5 years, you're kind of like, oh God, you're doing it. And because it's so fleeting, and because people don't quite know how to deal with their money and how they're doing things, they may not be mentally or financially prepared for it to all end. That's why you get somebody like Cap. Like, what do I do next? Like, I don't have that next thing to do. After the football thing is done.
What are you going to become a broadcaster? There's only so many of those positions open.
Correct.
So what are you going to do? Yeah. So I love that, and it kind of makes you think, and I wish more pro athletes would think about that, because they're so grossly overpaid, but they spend like crazy.
They spend ridiculously.
Yeah. And it's really unfortunate.
And sometimes it is also to keep an image as well, too. I mean, I think they played it perfectly with Jamie Foxx's character, because, he's got the contracts, he's got all that stuff in the background. He's got the music videos, he's got the big Jeep, the big Humvee, which, he did. He did until he realized that, you can't have it both ways. And that's also just freaking Oliver Stone just being like, I'll give you a hammer just to nail that in right now. Seriously, Oliver.
If you didn't already catch it, I'm going to split this car in half. I'm going to talk about it in halves because it's not clear enough.
Him doing what he does best. So, all right, okay. So this is the Under 8 series. I talk about, this is not the movie that I totally embrace, but I still really like it all the same. The stupid shit in this movie is very stupid. I mean, nobody keeps a baby alligator in their locker to throw in the shower. No one does that. What the hell is that? What is that? What was that?
There are a lot of moments where I'm like, did a second person ever read this script? Where Oliver was like, I got it. This is me. We're going to do it. Did you give this to any NFL people and be like, this can actually happen?
Which again, too, let's not forget that this screenplay, at least one of the first passes, was written by John Logan, who is a fantastic writer, who's written Skyfall, who's written Last Samurai. So many great things even before the 2010s.
And I think the script is still fine there. However, if you're trying to get to the realism of football, this also should have gone over through the eyes of actual professional football players. And while they gave this to the NFL to be like, yo, can we use your license? I don't know if how many players got to actually see this script, because they would have been like, yeah, that part, the cocaine stuff, keep that in because that's real.
Yeah, because that's real. Yeah.
There's no alligator happening.
So alligator in the shower, dumb. And then I'm also, this is another one that like really just irritates me, is the music video scene. No quarterback. I mean, there was the video, that notorious music video that the Bears did. Was it the Super Bowl Shuffle or whatever the hell it was?
Super Bowl Shuffle, yeah.
All right, maybe that's what he was referring to, but like, I know that maybe other NFL players have appeared in music videos. You don't have your own music video after like 3 starts in the NFL.
I said the timing of it is weird, and the timing gets a little weird in there anyway, because LT's like take flowers to Tony's place, but then it feels like multiple days occur before he actually gets to the house, and you're like, well, the music video. But you're right, the music video thing does not happen for a person that is three games in.
There's 3 games in, dude. Like, what the hell is like?
It was very much that he was clearly trying to sort of harken, because Dion was that prime time as a player, and he had the music videos, and that's what he was trying to sort of parallel to. But Dion had also been doing it for multiple years before that stuff started to roll in. This kid's not even, he's still on a rookie, like a third string
contract.
Yeah. Like, none of this makes sense.
Come on. I mean, like,
but like, you also have to wonder, is that a leftover from when P. Diddy was supposed to play the role? Or is that something that freaking Jamie Foxx was like, oh, wait a minute, I get a music video scene?
I can sing. Because he did do the theme song for the movie, so he probably like, I can do whatever. You want me to? I'll sing, I'll dance, I'll throw the ball, I'll act. I'm all purpose. And like the video, look, it makes sense that this is like a 4th year player that has been like starting all this time, but it's just the timing of it is like, this doesn't make sense. And what they're trying to say that it gets to his head, but you can do that with just the interview with John C. McGinley's character alone shows that it's getting to his head and he's breaking up the team. You
didn't need that. That is my whole point. You had the conversation with John C. McGinley's character where you could see his ego is getting out of control. You could, if you absolutely had to have it, you could have the endorsement deal.
The sports covers are fine. The metrics thing is fine. That sort of makes sense because brands do hop on quickly. Like, oh, this is the hottest thing. Let me jump on this.
Yeah, Jordan brand does it all the time.
Right.
And you also had the scene where, like, Cap and Willie are like signing autographs, and all the kids go to Jamie. You had all that. You didn't need to have the fucking music video. It's ridiculous. And again, it doesn't take me out of it entirely, but it's just like this. And I get what he's trying to do. He's trying to show that Jamie's focus is going everywhere else but football. Everywhere else.
He's turned his girlfriend away. Everything he sort of has pushed away. Yes. For the singular thing of this. And that sort of goes into, we'll talk about NFL in a bit, but that sort of just goes into how when you have conditions of certain athletes coming from certain backgrounds, this is when they get money or fame hits, they're like, I'm off. Screw everything else. I'm in it for myself.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get what he was trying to do, but at the same time, it rang false. So I didn't really, it took me out of the movie, not as much as the baby alligator did, but, and then you also mentioned the eyeball scene where, like, in the playoff game, it's like, I mean, I don't get it. I mean, I know Oliver Stone is all about shock value. He's all about style. He's all about, being over the top. But there's certain things, it's like, you got to realize that having this stuff in your movie, especially when you're hitting so many beats that are brilliant, that you're like really nailing it. When you let this shit into your movie, it kills the momentum and the great energy that these other things that you have nailed.
Yeah.
It like the steam room scene I'm talking about. That's great, but I could tell someone about that scene and they'd be like, yeah, but the eyeball in the field, yeah, but the baby alligator, yeah, but the music video. There's other dumb scenes of the movie that take away from the greatness of other scenes, and that's what's so frustrating about this movie for me, despite how much I like it. There's still a lot of things about that I wish would get cleaned up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And to even go on that as well, too, probably one of my biggest flaws with the film is the pace. And for it being a football movie, there are certain moments where the pace just goes so fast and you're just like, oh my God, that I could have gotten more of that scene. I could have gotten more of Tony and Willie together, or I could have gotten more of just some of the stuff going on between the players. But then coupled with those really stupid moments, and then also coupled with the fact that it sort of seems like at certain points Oliver Stone is sort of in love with the dialogue a little too much, that he lets scenes just drag on and on and on. There's no reason why this movie should be 2.5 hours. No reason.
No. Some of those party sequences are excessive. Like they go on for too long and are doing too much. Like, we don't need 3 of them.
I agree with you totally, but I think, and that's the thing, Oliver Stone with his damn excess. It's like the first party was absolutely necessary because he showed them doing coke with like the strippers,
correct,
and, like, you know, whatever.
You show how different they are from being on the field, right?
And you show the dynamic between Christina and the mayor and how like you have these fundraisers going on. But
I think that was really important because it also is underlying how the haves versus the have-nots.
Correct.
So that makes sense. I just think the dinner sequence, I get it because you're trying to get Willie back with his girl, but you can tighten that up. We're literally they're just out and he immediately sees her, and then we just go straight into that. We don't need to have the excess of conversation with him with the agent. I don't care about that in this time.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the frustrating things as an editor is that whenever someone says, "Oh, you need to make this movie short," people just assume right off the bat that, "Oh, you need to cut scenes." No, you don't need to cut scenes. There are breaths, there are moments here and there that you can cut in order to tighten
a little later.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that happens. There's a lot of times in this movie where I'm like, oh yeah, if you could cut it here or come here, I think you would have a slightly. This could be easily a 2 hour 10-minute film.
Easily.
2 hours and 10 is digestible as well. Yeah.
Easily. I mean, this was his longest movie since Nixon. Nixon, I think is his longest movie ever. But it's just there are flaws within the movie, and it kind of sucks because when this movie's on fire, it is on fire.
There's a lot that works.
Yeah. Right? When it doesn't work, it also it stalls.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a mixed bag. And I listen. I think this is the most brutally honest I've ever been about a movie I've covered, because most of the time I gush about the movies I talk about, but I have to be real about it because I do enjoy this movie. But there's issues with it. Yeah. Real quick, we'll try to wrap this up as quickly as possible. But in terms of this movie's accuracy to the NFL, I mentioned the Cap Rooney, Willie Beeman situation. Alex Smith probably watches this movie and empathizes with Cap so much because you're the quarterback, you're the first overall pick for the Niners back in 2005. You struggle with countless head coaches, offensive coordinators, and then you finally hit your stride with Harbaugh in 2011. But what happens in 2011? They draft a kid named Kaepernick.
Yeah.
And what happens? Alex Smith gets a concussion, and Colin Kaepernick starts. What happens? He takes him all the way to the Super Bowl. Alex Smith gets shipped out of town.
Yep.
Alex Smith goes to Kansas City, plays lights out for Andy Reid, just never really gets past the divisional round. What happens? They draft Patrick Mahomes. And what happens after, Patrick Mahomes kind of makes it obvious that he's the future? They ship Alex Smith out.
Yeah.
So, and I could never really think of, before that, again, I mentioned the Steve Young, Joe Montana thing, but it wasn't really the same thing. This was like, oh my God, this guy's literally, getting shipped out of town. I was thinking about Cap Rooney. I was like, my God, Cap Rooney is probably going to go play somewhere else. I don't think he's going to retire.
I don't think he's done.
I think he's Brett Favre. I think he's going to take a while off and then be like, I'm coming back. His wife's going to get to him. The pressure.
Yeah, he's like, I don't want to be home.
I don't want to be home. Yeah. Like, he's going to play again.
Yeah.
And there's also other things going on underneath the surface. Like, again, I love this stuff with the, how players, with the incentivized contracts, that if they don't play a certain amount of games or they don't hit a certain amount of touchdowns or sacks or whatever, they don't get paid a certain amount, which applies to LT's character.
They're willing to take every drug, everything to keep themselves on the field.
Everything. And
because I got to hit this one thing. And it's heartbreaking, the scene where Shark is like, being laid out on a stretcher, but he's like, I'm $1 million. Like, all he cared about was hitting that last hit so he can get that $1 million bonus. Like, I got it. Now I can go right off into the sunset.
Don't drop me. I'm worth $1 million.
Right. You'll never be able to walk again. And you're okay with that because you hit that $1 million threshold.
Yeah. Yeah. And it shows you how sleazy some of these medical guys are too, that they know damn well these guys' health is at risk, but either they're getting blackmailed or they want their contract extensions, like we mentioned earlier. There's a lot of truth in this movie, and that's why.
There's quite a few fascinating things about this movie, and it's an underlying thing. I love a lot of the Jamie stuff, Willie stuff when he's with John C. McGinley, and I mentioned a little bit earlier with Tony when as being a black quarterback, especially in that point in time, but still today, there's a bit of a stigma to black quarterbacks. And
yes.
Like you're a running quarterback, you can't learn the playbook, and it sort of lies into this again, where it's like he couldn't quite, education wise, whatever reason, he's just not in the same system that some of the other folks could have done, but he can't learn it.
Yeah.
But I was taken aback because I couldn't quite remember, but I'm like, oh my God, this is all layered in here. John C. McGinley is trying so hard to be cool and hip with Willie that he's using a lot of coded language that is just dangerous.
Yeah. No, I know, man. I know. And again, though, this is back in 1999.
Right.
There's still a lot of that shit going on today. There is. And not much has changed in professional sports in the last 22 years. Listen, we could talk all day about a lot of things about this movie, but we do have to kind of wrap it up here. Any parting thoughts before we wrap it up? I mean, so for the audience watching here, I mean, I know we spent a little bit of time criticizing the movie, but I think let's make it clear, all three of us enjoy the film.
Absolutely. I own it. Yeah, I really like this movie.
Yeah, I mean, we recommend it to you guys to check out, especially on the eve of the new football season. But any closing thoughts you guys want to talk about that we didn't mention earlier? Anything at all? I mean, I think we pretty much got all the bases. Well, I mean, we have all the bases covered, but I mean, again, we can plenty.
Yeah, it's funny to me now to watch this film with this massive cast from top to bottom, and knowing this is like Jamie's first sort of foray into like dramatic acting, and now he's become this massive character actor. You're like, oh no, this is where it sort of started for him to kind of get going.
Yeah,
like, Jesus, this man he's next level, and it's cool to see the young Jamie going like toe to toe with Dennis Quaid and Al Pacino and James Woods, but like still holding his own. And now what we get today, it's always kind of cool to go back to those old films and sort of see this is where it started.
Yeah. Talk about a trial by fire for Jamie Foxx, right? Like, geez, you're going to go up against not only some of the best actors that are currently in right now, you're also going to go up against the best, arguably one of the best actors of all time.
Yeah, and kudos to Oliver Stone too for making, going with a black quarterback as his, maybe not his lead, but his co-lead for sure. Because back in the NFL at the time, I mean, the only black quarterback I can think of is Steve McNair.
That's a great point, because there were no, and Steve McNair got trashed on all the time. Outside of Houston, got trashed on all the time.
Yeah, so he was the only one at the time that I was thinking, God, back then, like how many black quarterbacks were there in it was just Steve McNair.
Yeah.
I'm sure, maybe I'm forgetting like one or two, but like the big time stars was Steve McNair.
Yeah.
So again, Oliver Stone was ahead of the curve in that as well, because these days we got plenty of incredibly talented black quarterbacks.
Correct.
I mean, I look at Lamar Jackson, I see a lot of Willie Beeman qualities in Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
From the way he plays, the way he cares. I mean, Lamar's a lot more humble, but it's just the way he plays. There's an arrogance in the way that Lamar Jackson plays that reminds me of Willie.
Cunningham was around that time too.
Okay, fine, but you know, but
still,
it was rare, Anyway, guys, this was a pleasure. Terrence, where can we find you outside of the Underrated series? Where can we find you?
Oliver Stone, I'm here all the time. You can find me on Twitter at Terrence Tatum, or Instagram at I am Terrence Tatum. And then I do another podcast with our old friend Blake Schultz, who's been here before as well.
Yes.
Called Hollywood Already Did It. And then I run the YouTube channel for Hollywood Already Did It as well.
Very good. And Andres, we know where to find you everywhere, but go ahead and reiterate for the people in the back.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram as Galleghost. You can also find me on Twitch as Galleghost209. I'm going to be starting up my Twitch channel again now because of the fact I have so much more time to do stuff now and give you guys great content. But also, you can find me on the First Class League doing movie trivia matches against other competitors. By the time this video comes out, I should have my third match available right now, so I'm really excited for that. It's up on the Movie Trivia Schmodown YouTube page, and then also you can find me here chatting away with Steve on all these various different things that we all love.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And for me, and you can also find me right here talking about all kinds of movies, video games, even the High Voltage Show, which I did with Terrence several times last year for the NBA. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the movie. If you guys have watched this and you haven't seen the movie, I hope it inspires you to watch the movie, because regardless of our criticisms, I think we said enough positive about it to give it a look. And for those of our football fans out there, enjoy the season and go Sharks. Thank you guys for doing the show with me. And We'll catch you next time. So thank you for watching, everybody.
Gotta get to work. That's right. You know, come on. You know my name. Come on, my name is Willie. I keep the ladies creaming, and all my fans got 'em screaming. You can defeat me, you're dreaming.